They grew about 800,000 neurons, part mouse and part human, and taught them to play Pong. Two things about this were a big deal. First, a dish of cells was actually working toward a goal. Second, and this is the weird part, they figured out how to teach it. They could ask the cells a question and get an answer back. You're not supposed to be able to do that to a blob of tissue in a dish. So how do you teach a neuron? You can't give it a treat. So they used a basic fact about neurons. They hate chaos. If you give them a signal they can't predict, it stresses them out. So the setup was simple and kind of weird. When they missed the ball, they got hit with scramble and rapid noise. When they hit it back, the signal went calm and steady. The neurons have no idea what Pong is. They're not playing to win. They're just trying to make the chaos stop. And they didn't pick that method at random. They based it on an idea of the free energy principle. Basically, it says every living thing is always trying to avoid surprises and keep its world predictable. Because being surprised usually means something's wrong. So that urge to calm things down isn't something the scientists added. It might be the most basic thing a living cell does. But there's a big catch. We can grow brain tissue in 3D, and we can talk to living neurons. We just can't do both at the same time yet. So in order to talk to them, Dish Brain had to keep the cells flat because the chip that reads them is a flat grid. If you put a round organoid on it, you only touch the bottom layer. So they had to flatten it out and give up the brain's real shape just to talk to it. And remember, this is the crude version. Half the design is missing. Which brings us to a big new. Cortical Labs showed off a computer that runs on brain cells. They call it CL1, and it plays Doom. This one was grown from about 200,000 human neurons. They took skin cells, reset them, turned them into neurons, and spread them across a bed of electrodes. Then they tied the signals to moving and shooting the same way as before. When it did well, the signal stayed calm. When it took damage or died, the cells got flooded with chaos. And within about a week, it had learned the basics of moving around and shooting. I'm not going to pretend to be calm about this, and I don't think you should be either. It's amazing, and it kind of makes me sick. And I think both of those reactions are fair, because that computer came from a real person. It's literally made of human cells. I keep imagining what it would be like to be the thing stuck in there, playing the same little piece of game over and over forever, not remembering anything before it, not knowing that anything else even exists. For these cells, there's nothing else, just the game. Are we making a piece of a human being whose whole world is getting shocked inside a violent video game just to save some electricity? For years, we worried about the opposite thing, humans turning into machines, chips in our heads, that whole idea. Almost nobody expected it to happen the other way around. But that's kind of what's going on here. Now, to be fair, there was a big backlash to all of this, and it was kind of fair. When Cortical Labs published the Pong word, the title used a heavy word. It said the neurons showed sentience. Normally, that word means someone's in there having an experience. But the scientists meant it in a really narrow, technical way. Basically, anyway, the story blew up, and a lot of scientists were angry too. About 30 of them signed a letter saying the company had twisted the word just to get headlines and oversold the whole thing to help the business. Their worry was pretty practical. Too much hype leads to backlash, and enough backlash could shut down a young field like this. And this research really matters. Scientists use these same cells to build living models of human diseases. They can watch how a disease develops and test drugs on tissue that's way closer to ours than a mouse's. That could save real lives and replace a lot of animal testing. It would be a real loss if the stunt with Pong and Doom tracked it all down. Doom really was kind of a stunt. The audience asked for it, and it made great marketing. But it brings us right back to that doubt from 2008. Is the brain really playing, or is the computer just cleaning up random noise and making it look good? Almost 20 years later, we can finally check. The developer behind the demo, who goes by Sean Call, released the code so anyone can read it. And what's inside is not just a brain in a box. There are 3 parts. First, a normal computer chip running an AI that watches the game and decides when to reward and when to punish. Second, the 200,000 human neurons. And third, a translator in the middle passing messages both ways. Here's the uncomfortable part. Almost all of the actual smarts are on the chip, not in the cells. Reading the screen, running the learning, telling a win from a loss, that's all the computer. The developer was even worried his AI would get so good it wouldn't need the neurons at all. So he ran a simple test. He took the cells out and replaced them with pure random noise. And the learning just stopped. So the neurons are doing something real, even if it's a small part. So the truth is somewhere in the middle. It's not a brain playing on its own, but the cells aren't just for show either. It's mostly a normal computer doing the work, with living cells adding a small but real piece. That's where we are today, and here's where I think it goes next. I don't think that small biological parts stay small. Labs all over are racing to grow this tissue in full 3D and connect to it properly, because it rents out living human neurons over the internet. You pay a monthly fee, log in from anywhere in the world, and run experiments on 16 tiny human mini-brains that they keep alive in their lab. And their whole pitch is the same thing we started with: energy. They say these living chips can run on up to 1 million times less power than a normal one. So this weird one-off experiment is basically becoming a product you can subscribe to. And I believe sooner or later, someone's going to connect a full 3D mini-brain and close that last gap. But let's go back to that Doom machine for a second. Most of the smarts are at the computer. The cells only do a little. So it would be easy to hear that and just ignore it. But being smart was never the scary part here. Being smart and being awake are two different things. You can be great at solving problems and still not feel anything at all. So the real question isn't whether those cells are clever, it's whether anyone's actually in there. And it turns out being able to feel might not need a big smart brain at all. A renowned neuroscientist, Mark Solms, argues almost the opposite of what we were taught. Solms says feeling isn't something that sits on top of intelligence. He thinks it comes first, underneath everything else, and that it comes straight out of the basic drive to stay alive. Think about what came first in evolution. It wasn't logic or language. The earliest living things weren't solving anything. They were just doing something much simpler and older, moving toward what kept them alive and away from what didn't. So something like feeling was already around long before thinking showed up. Now think back to how these cells get trained. Chaos when they fail, calm when they succeed. That's the free energy principle again. That same drive every living thing has to avoid surprise and keep itself steady. And if Solms is right, that drive isn't just close to feeling. It might be where feeling actually starts. So maybe we've had it backwards this whole time. We're not slowly building a mind and waiting for it to wake up at the top. We might be poking at the exact thing feeling comes from, right at the bottom, from the very first moment we turn the dish on. And if something in there did start to feel, we'd probably miss it completely. We can barely spot it in each other. In 2006, a scientist named Adrian Owen studied a young woman who everyone had given up on. They called her vegetative. He put her in a brain scanner and asked her to imagine playing tennis, and her brain lit up exactly like yours would. She was completely awake and aware. She just couldn't move or speak to show it. And a later study found out that about 1 in 4 patients written off like that are actually still aware. So if we can miss a fully conscious person lying right in front of us, what chance do we have of spotting it in a clump of cells? We like to tell ourselves that feeling needs the right parts. Pain receptors, certain brain structures, but even that is shaky. Insects don't have a visual cortex that they clearly see, so feeling might run on parts that look nothing like ours, parts we'd never even think to check. When the noise in the dish gets too loud, the cells turn their response down like they're trying to block it out. Something in pain would do that, but so would something that feels nothing at all. Backing away from a bad signal isn't the same as suffering, and from the outside, there's no test that can tell the two apart. This is what the philosopher David Chalmers called the problem. We can map every single cell in a brain and still have no idea how it turns into an actual feeling. So let me be honest about both sides of this. Think about what this research could give us. It could help us finally understand diseases. It could replace a lot of animal testing. And all of it comes from a tiny few cells sitting in a dish, playing a game that's older than most of the people in the lab. It looks like nothing, but it might be the start of something huge. For almost the entire history of the universe, there was just matter and nobody around to feel any of it. Then, at some point, some of that matter arranged itself in a way that did something completely new. It started to feel. We've always thought of that
to feel aware
something
of itself.
Millions of years of evolution,
man.
And
You're
now
right.
basically trying to do
It is what it is.
on purpose.
The truth.
We take some cells, we wire them up, we train them with calm and chaos, and we watch to see what happens. And don't forget where those cells came from. They started as ordinary skin from a real living
Hey, you used two white people just now, bitch. You didn't use the original color, motherfucker. And we ain't going to no motherfucking moon, bitch.
Somewhere in that dish, a piece of that person might start to feel something. And nothing on the outside will change.
I'm through with you.
I am tired.